When my mom introduced me to crowd-stressing, my life changed forever. I used to think secrets only belonged in movies, the kind where someone lives two lives, one bright and ordinary, the other hidden behind locked doors and whispered silence. I never imagined I would become one of those people. And I definitely never imagined that the person who would open that hidden door for me would be my own mom. If you had met me a year ago, you would have described me as painfully normal. I was 23, working a quiet entry-level job at a small graphic design studio downtown. Nothing glamorous, mostly resizing logos, fixing color palettes, pretending I understood client feedback that made absolutely no sense. My coworkers liked me because I stayed quiet and finished things on time. My boss liked me because I never argued. Invisible, safe, predictable, and maybe a little empty. I lived at home with my mom in a narrow two-story house that always smelled faintly like vanilla candles and laundry detergent. After my dad left when I was 16, the house became quieter, softer, like the volume of life had been turned down and never turned back up again. Mom and I developed routines instead of conversations. Morning coffee in silence, dinner with the TV murmuring in the background, the occasional gentle question about work, friends, or whether I was seeing anyone nice. I always gave simple answers, because simple answers never lead to dangerous questions. But the truth was there was something different about me. Something I had buried so deep I almost convinced myself it didn't exist. Almost. It started with colors. That sounds strange, I know, but when you work in design all day, you begin to notice shades, textures, softness, little details most people ignore. I catch myself staring at flowing fabric and clothing ads while preparing marketing banners. Not in a weird way, just curious. There was a calmness to it, a quiet beauty I couldn't explain. Sometimes, walking home from the bus stop, I'd pass boutique windows glowing under warm yellow lights. Dresses shaped like gentle waves. Shoes that looked impossibly delicate. Silhouettes that felt expressive in a way my plain jeans and hoodies never were. I told myself it was artistic appreciation. Nothing more, because anything more would raise questions I wasn't ready to answer. So I kept walking. Every time. Mia was the only unpredictable part of my life. We met at a friend's small birthday dinner. One of those awkward gatherings where half the people don't know each other and everyone pretends the cake is amazing. She laughed loudly, asked bold questions, and looked directly at people when they spoke, like she could see through whatever mask they were wearing. When she looked at me, I felt exposed, but not in a bad way. More like she was waiting for the real version of me to say something. We started dating 2 weeks later. Mia was warmth where I was caution, confidence where I was hesitation, color where I was grayscale. She worked as a hairstylist, which meant her world was full of mirrors, transformations, and people brave enough to change how they looked. I used to admire that about her, the way she treated appearance like art instead of something fixed. Sometimes she'd joke, everyone has another version of themselves hiding somewhere. I always laughed, changed the subject, looked away before she could notice how close that sentence felt to the truth. Because if Mia ever discovered what lived quietly inside my thoughts, I wasn't sure she'd still look at me the same way. And losing her felt more terrifying than losing the secret. The night everything changed was completely ordinary. That's the part that still surprises me. No storm, no dramatic argument, no emotional confession, just a quiet Tuesday evening and the soft hum of the washing machine downstairs. I had come home early from work with a mild headache. Mom was in her room folding laundry, music playing softly, old songs she'd loved since before I was born. I remember standing in the hallway debating whether to ask what was for dinner when she said something that made my entire world stop. "Hey," she called gently, without looking up. "Can you help me with something in my room?" There was nothing unusual about the request. I'd helped her carry boxes, move furniture, fix shelves 100 times before, so I walked in without thinking. Her bed was covered in neatly folded clothes, soft fabrics, different colors, carefully arranged like pieces of a puzzle, and right in the center was a dress. Not flashy, not dramatic, just simple, light, quietly beautiful. I felt something twist inside my chest, sharp and sudden, like being caught doing something wrong, even though I hadn't done anything at all. Mom finally looked up at me. Her expression wasn't confused, wasn't judgmental. If anything, it was gentle, almost understanding, like she had been waiting for this moment much longer than I had. I was cleaning out some old things, she said softly. Then after a pause that felt too long, too heavy, too knowing, she added, "And I was wondering if you might want to try something." My heartbeat stumbled. The room felt smaller, warmer, impossible to escape. Because deep down, beneath years of silence, denial, and careful pretending, I already knew what she meant. And for the first time in my life, running away didn't feel like the safest choice anymore. That was the moment the hidden door opened. The moment my past, my fears, and a future I didn't understand all collided in one quiet bedroom filled with folded laundry and unspoken truth. I didn't know it yet, but the decision I was about to make would change everything. My relationship, my identity, my entire life. And once that first step was taken, there would be no going back to invisible again. I should have said no. That's the answer people expect when they hear the story. That I stepped back, laughed awkwardly, and pretended I misunderstood what my mom meant. That would have been the safe choice, the normal choice. The version of the story where nothing changes and life continues in quiet grayscale. But I didn't say no. I didn't say anything at all because standing there staring at that simple dress lying across her bed, something inside me felt recognized, not exposed, not trapped, seen. And that terrified me more than anything. Mom didn't rush me. She never had that kind of personality. Instead, she just sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded loosely in her lap, watching me with a calm patience that made silence feel louder. "You don't have to," she said gently. "I just thought maybe you've been curious. That's all." Curious. Such a small, harmless word, but it slipped straight past my defenses and landed somewhere deep in my chest because curiosity was easier to admit than truth. My voice cracked, and I cleared my throat. "I don't know what you mean." Another lie. Soft, automatic, familiar. Mom smiled sadly, like she'd heard that exact sentence years before. "You used to touch the fabrics when you were little," she said. "In stores, at home, you thought I didn't notice." My stomach dropped. Memories flickered. Tiny, distant flashes I had buried, without realizing it. Running my fingers along soft sleeves while she talked to cashiers, lingering near the women's section because the colors felt brighter there. Pulling my hand away quickly if anyone looked. Shame learned early lasts a long time. "I never wanted you to feel embarrassed," she continued quietly. "I just wanted you to feel safe whenever you were ready." Ready? The word echoed in my head like a question I'd avoided my entire life. Was I ready? Ready for what exactly? A mistake? A truth? A version of myself I might not be able to hide again? My heart was beating so loudly. I was sure she could hear it. "I wouldn't know what to do," I whispered. And that was the first honest thing I'd said. Her smile softened. Relief. Maybe like honesty. Even a tiny piece of it mattered more than the answer. "That's okay," she said. "We'd figure out together." Together. I didn't realize how badly I needed that word until that moment. The air in the room felt different after that. Still quiet, but no longer heavy. More like the silence before rain, full of something waiting to happen. Mom stood slowly and picked up the dress from the bed. Up close, it looked even simpler. Light blue fabric, soft and smooth, the kind of thing someone might wear on an ordinary spring afternoon. Nothing dramatic, nothing costume-like, just normal, which somehow made it more frightening. She held it out, not pushing, not insisting, just offering. My hands moved before my mind decided to. Slow, careful, like touching something fragile. The fabric slipped between my fingers like cool water, softer than anything I owned, softer than I expected. A strange warmth spread through my chest, gentle, unfamiliar, impossible to name. I should have dropped it. Instead, I held on. "I'll wait outside," Mom said quietly. "No pressure. Take your time." And then she left the room, closing the door halfway behind her. Not fully closed, not fully open, a space for choice. Now it was just me, the quiet room, and the version of myself I'd spent years pretending didn't exist. My reflection stared back from the tall mirror near her closet. Same plain t-shirt, same dark jeans, same carefully neutral person the world expected me to be. Safe, invisible, contained. I looked down at the dress in my hands. My pulse quickened. This was the line. The moment before everything changed or didn't, because once curiosity becomes action, you can't pretend you never wondered. My fingers trembled as I set the dress gently on the bed. Just to see, I murmured to the empty room. Nothing else. Another lie, but softer this time. Almost kind. I pulled my t-shirt off first. The air felt cooler against my skin, raising goosebumps along my arms. For a second, panic flared. This is wrong. You shouldn't be doing this. What if someone finds out? What if you can't stop? My breathing grew shallow. I almost quit right there. But then I remembered something Mia once said while styling a client's hair. Fear usually means you're close to something important. The thought settled over me like a quiet hand on my shoulder. And somehow I kept going. The dress was lighter than I expected when I lifted it again. Weightless, gentle. Pulling it over my head felt surreal, like stepping into someone else's life for just a moment. The fabric slid down slowly across my shoulders, over my chest, settling softly against my waist. Every tiny movement felt amplified, louder, brighter, realer. My heart pounded so hard it almost hurt. For a long moment, I couldn't look at the mirror because as long as I didn't see, I could still pretend this wasn't happening. But curiosity has gravity. It pulls you forward whether you're ready or not. Slowly, hesitantly, I lifted my eyes and sought me, but not the me I recognized. Something softer in the silhouette, something unfamiliar in the way the fabric moved with my breathing, something quiet and fragile and strangely beautiful. My throat tightened, not from shame, from emotion I didn't understand. I waited for disgust, for regret, for the overwhelming certainty that this was a mistake. But none of that came. Instead, there was calm, a deep, aching calm I had never felt in my own skin before. Tears blurred my vision before I realized I was crying. Not loud sobs, just silent tears slipping down my cheeks, carrying years of confusion with them. Why does this feel right? I whispered. The question hung in the air with no answer. Only truth. A soft knock came from a half-open door. My entire body jolted in panic. Are you okay? Mom's voice asked gently. Fear rushed back all at once. Sharp, electric, overwhelming. The secret, the risk, the reality of being seen. I'm fine. I managed, wiping my face quickly. A pause. Then the door opened just a little more. Her eyes found me in the mirror, and everything inside me froze. This was the moment I'd feared most. Judgment, regret, the look that says something is wrong with you. But her expression didn't change. No shock, no disappointment, only quiet understanding and something else. Relief. You look peaceful, she said softly. And that single sentence broke something open inside my chest. Because peaceful was exactly what I felt, even if I didn't understand why. I didn't know it yet. But that moment was the beginning of a secret that would grow larger than I could control. A secret that would soon involve lies, close calls, and the terrifying possibility of Mia discovering everything. Because secrets never stay small forever. And the more right something feels in the dark, the more dangerous it becomes when the light finally reaches it. Secrets don't explode all at once. They stretch first, quietly, almost gently, like fabric pulled tighter and tighter until one small movement is enough to tear everything open. For weeks after that first night, my world existed in two versions. Daytime was predictable. Work, messages from Mia, dinner with Mom, the careful, ordinary rhythm everyone expected. But nighttime belonged to the version of me I was still afraid to name. At first, it was only small moments, trying on the same blue dress again when Mom was downstairs, standing in front of the mirror just long enough to feel that strange calm return, quickly changing back before the guilt could catch up. I told myself it was temporary, just curiosity, just something I needed to understand so it would finally go away. But it didn't go away. It grew. New clothes appeared. Never suddenly, never overwhelming. A soft sweater one week, simple flats the next. Mom never pushed, never asked questions that felt like traps. She just made space. And the more space she gave me, the more impossible it became to pretend this part of me wasn't real. The real danger wasn't the clothes. It was Mia. Because loving someone means eventually being seen. And I was building an entire second self she knew nothing about. Every time she smiled at me, every time she kissed me goodbye, a quiet voice whispered, if she knew, this would disappear. That fear kept the secret alive. But it also made the secret heavier, and heavy things don't stay hidden forever. The night everything unraveled started like any other Friday. Mia texted me in the afternoon. Girls' night ran late last week. Tonight is just us. Movie food. No excuses. Be ready at 7. My chest tightened the moment I read it, because Mom had told me she'd be working a late shift, which meant the house would be empty, which meant time alone. Time I had already started craving more than I wanted to admit. I should have ignored the urge, stayed normal, stayed safe. Instead, at 6 o'clock, I was standing in front of the mirror again. This time, wearing more than just a dress. Light makeup, barely noticeable, but enough to soften my face. The flats that made my steps quieter, smaller. A different silhouette staring back at me. Not a costume anymore. Someone are real. My heart pounded with equal parts fear and relief. I'll change before she gets here, I whispered. Just a few minutes. But minutes are dangerous when you're pretending control. Because the doorbell rang at 6:32. The sound sliced through the house like lightning. For one frozen second, my brain refused to understand. She wasn't supposed to be early. She never arrived early. The bell rang again. Panic crashed over me. Hot, blinding, total. I ran to the window and there she was, Mia, smiling, holding takeout, completely unaware she was seconds away from seeing the truth I had hidden for months. My breathing turned sharp and uneven.
Change.
Change now. Move. I rushed to the bedroom, hands shaking so badly I could barely grab my regular clothes. The zipper caught. My fingers slipped. Every second felt louder than thunder. The bell rang a third time. Then her voice muffled through the door. Hey, you okay in there? Too late. There wasn't enough time not to erase everything, not to become the person she expected again. Footsteps on the porch, the faint sound of the handle turning. I had forgotten to lock the door. The moment stretched into something unreal. I stood in the hallway, half changed, heart slamming against my ribs, so hard it hurt. The door opened slowly. Light from outside spilled across the floor, reaching my feet first, then climbing higher, and then she saw me. Silence isn't empty. Sometimes it's the loudest sound in the world. Mia didn't scream, didn't drop the food, didn't even move. She just looked at the dress, the makeup, the version of me I had hidden behind locked doors and careful eyes. Seconds passed, or maybe minutes. Time stopped meaning anything. My throat closed with terror. This isn't I can explain. I was just the words collapsed before they could become sentences, because there was no explanation big enough to hold the truth. Tears burned behind my eyes. Not from shame this time, from the certainty that I was about to lose her. Every worst-case scenario I'd imagined, every nightmare of rejection, all of it was happening now for real. Unstoppable. I'm sorry, I whispered, voice breaking. I didn't know how to tell you. Her expression finally changed. Not anger, not disgust, something harder to understand. Hurt, yes, but also recognition, which made no sense at all. She stepped inside slowly and closed the door behind her. The quiet click sounded final, like the end of one life and the beginning of another. You thought I'd hate you, she said softly. It wasn't a question. I couldn't answer because the truth was written all over my fear. A long silence followed. Then she set the takeout down on the table with careful, steady hands. When she looked back at me, her eyes were shining. You should have trusted me, she whispered. My heart stuttered. Not rejection.
Not yet.
Hope flickered. Small, fragile, dangerous. I was scared, I admitted, of losing you. Her breath trembled. You almost did, she said. Not because of this, but because you were alone in it. The words hit harder than anger ever could. because they were true. She walked closer. Each step tightened the air in my lungs. I didn't know if she was coming to comfort me or say goodbye. When she stopped in front of me, we were close enough that I could see every emotion fighting behind her eyes. Confusion, sadness, care, and something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. Her hand lifted slightly, hesitating in the space between us. Then, very gently, she touched the fabric at my sleeve. Not pulling away, not recoiling, just feeling it. My entire body went still. "This is why you looked different lately," she murmured quieter, like you were hiding somewhere I couldn't reach. Tears finally spilled over. "I didn't want to lie," I said. "I just didn't know who I was anymore." The confession hung between us, raw and irreversible, because once truth is spoken out loud, it can't be taken back. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The world outside kept existing. Cars passing, distant voices, ordinary life continuing like nothing had changed. But inside that hallway, everything had. My secret was gone. My future balanced on a single breath, and whatever happened next would decide who I was allowed to become. Mia's fingers tightened slightly on the fabric. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely louder than a whisper. Then maybe she swallowed hard. "We figured out together. Hope can be more terrifying than fear, because fear prepares you for loss. Hope risks everything." My heart pounded even harder than before. "You mean you're not leaving?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. And that hesitation, that single fragile pause, changed the feeling in the room completely, because suddenly I wasn't sure anymore. Her phone buzzed loudly in her pocket, shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen. Her expression shifted, tight, uncertain. "What is it?" I asked, dread creeping back in. She looked up at me slowly. "It's my sister," she said. "She's outside." The words didn't make sense at first. "Outside?" "She wanted to drop something off," Mia whispered.
She's walking to the door right now.
Footsteps approached the porch. Another voice closer, unavoidable. And I was still standing there, visible, exposed, with nowhere left to hide. Mia's eyes locked onto mine, wide, with the same realization crashing through me. The secret wasn't just ours anymore. In 3 seconds, someone else would see. 2 seconds, my heartbeat roared in my ears. 1, a knock hit the door. Sharp, sudden, final. And in that instant, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding since the very beginning. This wasn't just about clothes or secrets or fear. It was about whether I was brave enough to let the world see who I really was. The knock didn't sound loud, but in that moment, it felt powerful enough to split my life into before and after. Mia and I stared at each other, both of us breathing too fast, both of us understanding the same terrifying truth. There was no more time, no more hiding, no more changing back, no more pretending the secret belonged only to quiet bedrooms and locked doors. Another knock came, sharper this time. "Mia," her sister's voice called from outside. "I know you're in there." My stomach dropped so suddenly it felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. Every instinct screamed the same command. Run, hide, fix this. But there was nowhere to go because the real fear wasn't being seen in a dress. The real fear was being seen completely, with no lies left to protect me. Mia's hand found mine. I didn't even notice her moving. Just the sudden warmth of her fingers wrapping around my shaking ones. It grounded me instantly, pulled me out of the spiral of panic just enough to breathe. Her grip was tight, but not desperate. Steady, like she was making a decision in real time and needed me to feel it. She leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Whatever happens next," she said softly, "I don't want you to face it alone again." Something inside my chest cracked open. Not painfully this time, but like a locked door finally giving way. Because all night, all month, all year, I had been preparing for abandonment. Not for this. Not for someone choosing to stay after seeing everything. My throat tightened. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I know," she whispered.
So am I.
The silence that followed felt strangely calm. Not peaceful, not safe, but honest. And honesty has a different kind of quiet, one that doesn't suffocate. The knock came again, more impatient now. Mia opened the door. 3 heartbeats passed. Mia looked at the entrance, then back at me. I could see the question in her eyes.
Not.
Should we hide? That moment was already gone. The real question was simpler, harder. Are you ready? Ready to let this become real? Ready to let someone else know? Ready to stop living 2 separate lives? I didn't feel ready. But for the first time, I also didn't feel like running. Slowly, before I could overthink it, I nodded. Just once. Small, terrified, but real.
Mia squeezed my hand.
Then she let go. The loss of warmth lasted only a second before she stepped toward the door. Each step sounded louder than the last, would cring softly under her weight. Time stretching thin with anticipation. My pulse roared in my ears so violently I could barely hear anything else. This was it. The moment everything changed again. The moment the secret stopped being a secret. Her hand reached for the handle.
Paused.
I saw her shoulders rise with one slow breath, then fall. And finally, the door opened. Cool evening air slipped inside first, then her sister's silhouette in the doorway. Casual, unaware, ordinary. For half a second, nothing happened because she was looking only at Mia, talking mid-sentence, complaining about traffic, holding a small paper bag. Normal life continuing like the universe hadn't just shifted on its axis. Then her eyes moved past Mia's shoulder and found me. I've tried to describe that moment 100 different ways. Shock, confusion, recognition. But the truth is, it was quieter than any of those. Her expression didn't explode into judgment, didn't twist into disgust. It simply stopped, like her brain needed one extra second to rewrite everything it thought it understood about me. That single second felt endless. My heartbeat pounded so hard I thought I might faint. This is it. This is where everything breaks. No one spoke. Not Mia, not her sister, not me. 3 people standing in a doorway balanced between past and future. I waited for the worst, because waiting for pain is easier than hoping for kindness. Her sister's gaze shifted slowly, taking in the dress, the makeup, my trembling hands. Then finally, she looked straight into my eyes and asked one quiet question. Does anyone else know? The words hit me harder than anger would have because they weren't cruel. They weren't mocking. They were careful, serious, real. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I didn't know the answer. Did Mom count?
Did Mia?
Did I even count after hiding from myself this long? Tears blurred my vision again. Not dramatic, just honest. A life built on silence doesn't learn to speak in one night. Mia stepped slightly closer to me, not blocking me, not speaking for me, just standing there. Support without control, choice without pressure. For the first time, the answer was mine to give. My voice shook, but it existed. I'm trying to figure that out, I said.
Truth.
Small, fragile, but finally real. Her sister studied me for a long moment, long enough that doubt started creeping back in. Long enough that fear tried one last time to pull me under. Then she exhaled slowly, and her shoulders just slightly relaxed. I brought dessert, she said quietly, lifting the small paper bag a little. The normalness of the sentence felt almost unreal, like the world had tilted sideways instead of collapsing. No yelling, no dramatic exit, no instant rejection, just uncertainty and space. The same space my mom had given me, the same space Mia was giving me now. Space to become something none of us fully understood yet. But uncertainty isn't safety. Not really. Because acceptance whispered tonight doesn't guarantee acceptance tomorrow. Families talk, questions spread, truth grows harder to contain. And standing there in the doorway, heart still racing, future completely unknown, I realized something that both terrified and strangely comforted me. This was only the beginning, not the end of the secret, but the start of a life where hiding might finally become impossible. Later that night, after the conversations I can't even describe yet, after the silence, after the careful, fragile calm, I stood alone in front of the mirror again, still wearing the dress, still shaking slightly, still unsure who I was becoming.
But one thing had changed.
For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible anymore. And I didn't know if that would save me or destroy everything. So tell me, If you were standing where I stood with the truth finally exposed and the future completely uncertain, what would you do next? Because the next choice I make might change my life forever. And I'm not sure I'm ready for what comes after the door opens.